Picture this. I wake up frantically to check my phone to see if I missed an alarm, an emergency call, a work meeting, or my son waking up. Anxiety wave 1, right off the gate. I finally then settle into my morning routine. I feed my baby, change him, go to the living room, reach around the coffee maker. Another anxiety wave hits. Did the toaster touch anything that it could possibly ignite when I wasn't paying attention? Did the coffee pot get overly hot and catch on fire? Did someone steal my dogs from my backyard because I have not heard from them in about 20 minutes? I put my son down for his morning nap. I calm myself down and open up my computer to work. Next anxiety wave. I see my task list, but I keep pacing between 10 tabs on my computer bar, task manager, check on my Amazon package status, and frantically check on my son to make sure that he is breathing every 5 minutes. I get a game plan of what I want to tackle first, and then I sit there and stare at all the things around my house that need to get done. I'll start folding laundry, go put cleaner in the toilets, write an email before I forget what I need to send out, go do the dishes, and then eventually circle my way back around to finish the first task that I intended to start. While all checking on my baby to make sure that he is still breathing, flat on his back, nothing in the bassinet, swaddled, and at night, it's even worse. I will stay up until 2 a.m. checking on my baby constantly in case he stops breathing or miraculously rolls on his stomach at 8 weeks old. I only get to sleep when I know that my husband is with him. Every noise outside I am convinced is a murderer or someone trying to break in, and I have to come up with a game plan how I'm going to save my son, pets, and wake up my husband all in the process. I'll get up a few times to make sure that the door is locked. I triple check that all my alarms are set, and I'll repeat things throughout the day that usually went wrong over and over again till I eventually fall asleep. This pattern repeats over and over again. I get sensory overload from my baby being colicky and sick and screaming most of the day to having sound machines, TV, dogs playing, or barking to go outside, music in the background so I can rehearse for Sunday mornings, to my husband trying to talk to me about his day over the noise. I get sensory overload and I shut down. It takes me a solid 30 minutes to fully calm down and come back calmer. See, I have anxiety, ADHD, and I'm pretty sure I am dabbling in some postpartum anxiety and depression. And that story I just told, none of that was made up. This is my daily routine with a form of mental illness, and yours may look different. Yours may look nothing like mine at all. I am just a dot on the vast spectrum of amount of kinds that there are. Anxiety, depression, bipolar, obsessive compulsive disorder, eating disorders, attention deficit disorders, PTSD, substance abuse. This is just a short list of mental illnesses that people deal with every day. In our current society, mental illness is at the forefront of most conversations. Now, more than ever, people are realizing that mental illness is real, it is hard, and that it needs to be talked about. See, when I was growing up, it was sort of a taboo subject. No one really talked about seeing a therapist or a counselor, and if you did, everyone speculated the worst. And if you took medication or had extra help at school, you were for sure talked about. I always wondered why that was. It's not like you can control any of it. See, for me, almost everyone in my family either has ADD, ADHD, anxiety, or some form of depression. When I was younger, most of the time, if you had ADHD or a learning disability, you were prescribed a medication and basically sent on your way. And if you had a learning disability, there luckily were programs when I got to high school like No Child Left Behind, where I was able to get a special test-taking space to help cut down on my distractions and to ensure that I was getting the best help to make me succeed. While some learning disabilities were being addressed, no one really talked about mental illnesses, and there weren't really many options to turn to aside from that big pamphlet shelf in the office. And nowadays, there are so many resources for youth to go to, like chat lines, therapists that are more easily accessible, programs, and centers. I'm sure they had them when I was younger too, but nothing like they are now. Almost 10% of youth have some form of ADD and ADHD. 7% have been diagnosed with an anxiety or a behavioral disorder, and about 3.5% have anxiety or depression. Now, that might seem like a small number, but 3.5% of youth is almost 2 million people. That is a massive number. And keep in mind, that is only the people who have been officially diagnosed and tested. Now, before we get into the heart of this topic, I do want to be explicitly clear about something. We are not here to be doctors or therapists. We are not here to diagnose you or to tell you the symptoms or actions of a few illnesses for you to try and see which one you fall into. We are simply here to talk about a topic that we think is relevant to your age group and to help those who may need to hear it. And if you truly think that you have an undiagnosed disorder, please feel free to come talk to us. We will do whatever we can to help you, but don't take what we talk about over the next few weeks strictly as medical advice. Also, I want to be clear that we are not pushing medication or therapy as a blanket statement that applies to everyone. Yes, sometimes therapy and counseling is one that all will need, and sometimes they'll only need medication. Both are absolutely okay and can be necessary for someone, but it's not our place to tell you one way or the other is what you are going to need. All of us are unique and will need different things. See, people of faith can often really struggle with this. I've heard a lot of questions of, if we believe in Jesus and we have enough faith, why do I suffer from depression? Or why do I have an eating disorder if I treat my body like a temple and I am created perfectly in the image of God? Here's the hard part. The Bible does not explicitly explain how to navigate illnesses in 2022, but it does shed some light into how it was handled when the Bible was written and how to address it for those who have it. So let's start at the beginning. What is mental illness? Elijah did a great job of explaining this last week, but just to quickly cover it again, mental illnesses are health conditions involving changes in emotion, thinking, or behavior, or a combination. Mental illnesses are associated with distress and or problems functioning in social, work, and family activities. This covers a massive range of categories that I could not possibly cover all the different kinds about in about 15 minutes, but you know what I can cover? How this ties into the Bible. Well, at least the start of it. Believe it or not, there are some people in the Bible that show signs of mental illness, like Elijah, Job, and Moses, just to name a few. And something I wanted to focus on was anxiety. I suffer with quite a lot of anxiety, like I mentioned in the story earlier. And some days are better than others. Some days I'll drive 20 minutes back to my house to make sure that my computer charger isn't plugged in because I'm worried that it'll overheat and cause a fire. And since becoming a new mom, I've been significantly more worried. I'm now worried about keeping a tiny human alive and worried about making the right call 24/7. And it is exhausting. So what do I do? If I'm being honest, sometimes I just go through the motions. What my husband always reminds me of is, well, did you pray about it? While I will not always receive the answer like, yes, he needs to get exactly 2 milliliters of this medicine instead of 1, but it does bring me a bit of peace knowing that I have someone listening. See, for you all, I know you have a lot on your plate, especially coming out of the past 2 years that we've had. From virtual learning, AP exams, college applications, sports, transitioning from elementary to middle school, which is a big one, to boyfriends, girlfriends, and everything in between. And when I was doing some research before writing this message, I saw this quote from an article, and it said, "The average high school student today has the same level of anxiety as an average psychiatric patient in the early 1950s. That is a bold statement, but I don't think it's inaccurate. School has become insanely competitive, and not only that, you have to deal with social issues too. Will I make friends this year? Will I fit in? Will people think that I dress funny? Is this the right decision for me? There is so much anxiety that just precedes the school day, but here's the cool part. You are not alone. So many of us have anxiety, and even people in the Bible, like Martha who hosted Jesus at her home, Job who lost all of his material possessions and his children, King David, a man after God's own heart. Try carrying around that title. Or Moses, like Elijah referenced last week. He led millions of people out of Egypt through a parted sea. Even Jesus, who was anxious about crucifixion, that he was literally sweating blood. The amount of adrenaline and fear that you would have to cause that is crazy. And it is easy to feel like we are drowning in our worries, fears, and anxieties. This is how the disciples felt before Jesus literally saved them from drowning in the book of Matthew. This story starts after Jesus has preached to a crowd, gets into a boat, and the disciples follow him. And Jesus says that they're about to go to the other side of the water. See, the disciples followed Jesus wherever he goes, but this time a large storm came. As they traveled across the Sea of Galilee, the wind was so bad that it brought water into their boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples woke him up in a panic, and this is where we're going to pick up in Scripture. "Lord, save us, we are going to drown." He replied, "You have little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him." This passage came right after Jesus was preaching about the parables of healing people and even casting out demons. They had just heard about all these incredible miracles, yet still had little faith. See, when we are in the middle of a storm, it can be easy to cling onto the fear and to be overwhelmed. And I only read you a small portion of this story, so I really encourage you to go and read the whole thing. It really is a great story. But one particular thing that I find interesting about this story is that during the midst of chaos, Jesus was calm. "And behold, there arose a great storm on the sea, so that the boat was being swamped by the waves, but he was asleep." See, in this moment, they, meaning the disciples, had more fear in the storm than they had trust in God. But Jesus took control of what otherwise would have been a chaotic situation. See, he can do the same thing in our lives too. There is nothing that he has not already seen or planned for you. I know it's easy to say, "Oh, just trust in God, you'll be fine." But I want to leave you with 4 steps that maybe can help control some anxiety and lean into trusting God more. And first is to be still. You may know the scripture, Psalm 46:10, "Be still and know that he is God." That is not a suggestion. It can be hard to be still when you are anxious or borderline in a panic attack, but the more you can be still and take a moment to breathe, you can be calmer to try to start tackling the task ahead. For me, being still is putting my phone down when I rock my son. That way I'm able not to focus on text, social media, and other things that may be causing me some anxiety. I also like to take my dogs on a walk. It can be 30 minutes in nature, away from whatever is causing me stress, so I can gather myself and calm down my senses. Other options could be listening to your favorite music for a few minutes. Exercising can be a great tool in boosting a happier mood. Painting some form of art or writing a journal, which you'll hear more about in just a minute. Second is to focus on the things that you can control. You can't control someone talking bad about you behind your back or if a boy or girl will like you, but what you can control is you can be the best you and be kind to those around you. You can be true to yourself and not change to what you think the boy wants you to be. You can clean your room and live in a less chaotic space. You can do your homework earlier to allow more time to do the things that you enjoy later. And I don't know what this will look like for you, but you can find those small things you can control and take a hold of them. 2 Timothy says this: "For the Spirit God gave us does not make us timid, but gives us power, love, and self-discipline." Third is to write it down. I know from experience that anxious thoughts can seem like constantly circling back and around in our minds, and writing it down can really help slow down your mind just a little bit, putting pen to paper, and maybe even working through some of that in the moment. And it could also help you find a pattern. Maybe there is a repeated trigger for you that you just might not know it yet. And when you can write it all down and physically see what you are stressing about, maybe you can try to alleviate it. I know for me, one of mine was procrastinating so long that I have to squeeze in what seemed like 1,000 other tasks, causing me to panic, shut down, and not give it my best effort. I realized this was a pattern of mine, and I actively try to fix it. Now, I am not perfect by any means, but I am trying to get there. And lastly is to pray. And yes, this is your typical church leader answer. Absolutely. But it is one of the best tools that you can have. And I know it may seem kind of minuscule just to pray about it, but I speak from very, very personal experience that praying makes a world of difference. Now, it may take a few prayers, but the amount of relief that you will find is pretty awesome. And it took me a while to figure out that prayer can really bring clarity to an issue, an answer to a problem, or just someone to listen. Now, this is not an exhaustive list of solutions to your anxiety, but it is a start. And I want you to know that if this is something that you really are struggling with, we want you to feel like you can come and talk to us. We may not have all the answers or maybe even any answers, but we will be there for your support. Your small group leaders care about you and they will be ready whenever you are, and you are not alone in this. You have a group of people who would love to help you in any way that they can, and all you have to do is just make that step and ask. Also, maybe this is something that you don't struggle with, but maybe you know someone who does. Use this series as a tool to help your friend. They could come with you to small group for the entire series or watch it back on YouTube. We just really want to make sure that whatever you are dealing with, that you feel seen, heard, and loved. We are here for you, so let's talk about it.